There was a Greek sanctuary where the fates of kings, generals, and entire cities rested on the words of a single woman. An uneducated peasant seated on a bronze tripod in an underground chamber, inhaling vapor rising from the bowels of the earth. The Greek world called her the Pythia, and everyone listened. The sanctuary of Apollo at Delphi was not simply the spiritual center of the Greek world. It was a first-order economic and political hub, a place where currencies were standardized, slaves were freed, disputes between city-states were mediated, and treasures from across the Mediterranean accumulated. The polis competed with one another by building thesauroi, small chapels along the sacred way, monuments of civic propaganda dressed up as religious devotion, and at the center of the entire apparatus, immovable, was she. The Pythia was always a local woman from Delphi, chosen by the temple priesthood to serve for life. The oldest tradition required her to be young and virgin, but after an incident in which a prophetess was abducted by Echerecates of Thessaly, it was established that she had to be a woman over 50. Even so, she continued to wear the robes of a maiden as a symbolic reminder of the purity the role demanded. Plutarch, who served as a priest at Delphi, described the Pythia of his time as a simple peasant woman without technical training or rhetorical education. Her lack of knowledge and formal learning was precisely what guaranteed, in the logic of the system, that her mind will be a pure vessel for the voice of the god, free from the interference of human reasoning. Before each session, the ritual was rigorous. The Pythia fasted, purified herself at the Castalian spring, drank water from the Cassotis spring, and chewed laurel leaves. The consultation could only begin if a sacrificial goat trembled violently when dosed with cold water. The very sign that Apollo was present and ready to speak. The Pythia then descended into the Aditon, a restricted chamber set below the floor level of the temple. She sat upon the tripod, positioned directly over a fissure in the rock. For decades, modern researchers dismissed the ancient accounts of the pneuma, the prophetic vapor said to rise from this fissure. The main reason was that 19th century archaeological excavation found no trace of any great chasm beneath the temple. Recent geological studies, however, have completely overturned that position. The temple was built over the intersection of two active tectonic faults, in a zone of bituminous limestone rich in organic matter. The friction between rock blocks during seismic movements would have generated enough heat to vaporize the hydrocarbons trapped within the stone. Among those gases, ethylene, a sweet-smelling compound used as a surgical anesthetic in the early 20th century. In moderate doses, it produced euphoria and trance while preserving the ability to respond to external stimuli, before the effect dissipates rapidly. The Aditon was designed precisely to concentrate those vapors since it was a small, poorly ventilated chamber set below ground level. Archaeological evidence even suggests that the omphalos, the conical stone marking the center of the wall, may have functioned as a funnel directing the gas straight toward the Pythia. For much of the 20th century, the dominant view, represented by scholars such as Herbert Park and Donald Wormel, held that the Pythia emitted incoherent sounds in a state of uncontrolled frenzy, and that it was the male priest who interpreted those ravings, versified them into hexameters, and delivered them to the petitioner. Under this reading, the Pythia was nothing more than a puppet of the male priesthood. from 1978 onward, that model began to collapse. Joseph Fountainrose demonstrated that there is no evidence in the classical authors to support the incoherent babbling theory. The sources, beginning with Herodotus, present the Pythia as the direct voice of the god, delivering coherent responses, sometimes in hexameters, often in prose, speaking in the first person as if she was Apollo himself. Contemporary scholars such as Lisa Maurizio have reinforced this reassessment through comparative anthropology, arguing that the spiritual possession granted the Pythia an authority and a voice that transcended the severe social constraints imposed on a woman of her time. That was precisely what made the Pythia so singular within the Greek world. Under the identity of the god, she could be blunt, assertive, critical of kings and generals, a behavior that would have been unacceptable in almost any other Greek woman. The trance was not only a religious mechanism, it was also the only framework the patriarchal system would tolerate for a woman to exercise that kind of authority. The ambiguity of Herodotus, far from being priestly fraud, was a deliberate feature of the divine message. It forced the petitioner to take responsibility for their own decision. For instance, when the Athenians asked how to defend themselves against the Persian invasion, the Pythia answered that they should trust in the wooden walls. Themistocles read that as an order to build a fleet, and it paid off. But that was not always how it went. The oracle remained active for over a millennium. Its decline gradual. The beginning of the end came with the great earthquake of 373 BC, which shifted the faults and likely reduced the gas emissions. The sacred wars and the systematic looting of its treasuries eroded its financial standing. With the arrival of Roman dominion and the rise of Christianity, Delphi ceased to be a center of decision-making and became a destination for cultural pilgrimage. Its definitive closure would not come until the late 4th century AD, with the edict of Emperor Theodosius. But through all that time, at the heart of the most powerful institution in the Greek world, there was a woman. A woman whose authority depended on a god, on a gods, on a system that needed her just as much as it controlled her.